a little bit about Dr. Rexhepaj. As I mentioned, he is Director of Data Science, Bioimaging and Computational Pathology at Sanofi, France. He's leading a data science team working on development of AI ML models applied to biomedical imaging data. He received a PhD, Master of Science in Computer Science from University of Lausanne and a PhD in bioinformatics from University College Dublin. After the PhD, he continued his research at Karolinska, KTH Science for Life Human Protein Atlas projects on biomarker discovery from ex-vivo and in-vivo image-based mapping of human proteome. Towards biomarker research, his work was focused on robust and scalable methods for multiplexing proteome expression from both ex-vivo histology and in-vivo microscopy. The therapeutical area of interest during his academic research was oncology. I'll be covering several indications, example, breast, lung, colon, prostate, and melanoma. For the past years, his professional experience has been in biotech, pharma industry, in drug discovery, and biomarker development. His work consists of application of AI ML to imaging and omics data to leverage actionable biomedical knowledge across the R&D value chain. The latest industry experience covers in vivo, preclinical, in vivo, ex vivo, clinical, ex vivo, medical imaging applications. So Elton, the floor is yours, and I let you share your screen and also your presentation.
Thank you, Andrea, for your very nice presentation, introduction. It's a pleasure to be here to speak to fellow Marie Curie alumni, and I wish my experience can inform you guys with regard to your next career move. And even although there is a limited number of topics we can discuss during the presentation, please do not hesitate to contact me through the social media. LinkedIn in particular, that's what I use. If you have questions after this webinar, I will be very happy to help you with regard to specific questions you might have for Sanofi, but general pharma industry. So let me share the the slide deck I had prepared.
I can see it.
Is it a full display or should I switch?
No, it's a good one. It's the good one.
Great. So without further ado, let me start. So I will first try to. I am obliged to make a disclaimer that the content presented on the next slides, it's and discussion is based on my personal opinion and experience. That does not in any way reflect my team, my management, or my employer. And on the remaining slides, I wanted to share with you. Just before I start presenting my slides, please, if you have any, I don't know, Onela, do you want me to finish the slide and then leave the question to the end, or do you prefer to stop me during the presentation for questions?
I think we can do the presentation and then leave the questions in the end.
Okay.
Because we also have some questions from the people who registered, and so we can ask them and then move on with the questions that participants have. Great.
So with regard to what I had prepared in terms of slides, I just prepared a few slides to provide a kind of a context that we can further discuss. And I want to focus on the next slides with regard to my professional background, so you have an idea of how I have transited from academia to industry. What I think is the pharma industry overview today with regard to general trend for recruitments. What is the recruitment process perspective? And this will be my perspective as a hiring manager, but also as a hiring manager today at Sanofi, but also at the previous biotech companies that I was previously working. And then I want to focus more specifically on the data science, because this is the area of expertise, and might be also maybe relevant to some of you that are listening to us today. So with regard to my professional background, just to recap a little bit what Orenda said in her introduction. So I graduated from University of Lausanne in Switzerland in computer science. But then I had I didn't see myself as a computer scientist, and I wanted to expand my knowledge on medicine, and in particular, the topic of my master thesis was feature extraction from mass spectrometry for diagnosis of stroke. And because of this, the master science experience, I had the desire to kind of further deepen the knowledge about stroke, about mass spectrometry, about biomarkers. That was the topic of my master thesis, and that kind of drove my interest and made me decide to do a PhD in focus on biomarker research and development. So initially it was again stroke, but then as some of you might have experienced by yourself, you kind of have to adapt to the evolution and to the interest in the field. So I was proposed to switch topic from stroke to oncology, given also my previous experience, and that's why after the first year of my thesis, I switched to oncology and to biomarker R&D discovery on not anymore on mass spectrometry, but imaging, medical imaging. And in particular, how can you use medical imaging as a source of information to extract meaningful data from the images? This was the first part of my thesis, and the second part was, once you have this meaningful data extracted from the images, how can you make them actionable with regard to predicting a clinical outcome? For example, patient prognosis or patient diagnosis in oncology. Then the second part of my academic career was the postdoctoral. So the PhD was a Marie Curie founded thesis, and then as part of our ongoing collaboration during my PhD, we had a collaboration with the Human Protein Atlas project in Sweden, and together with my PI, we applied for an IMI a grant. So this was part of the innovation medicine initiatives grants from the European Union that kind of promotes the collaboration between academia and industry, and this is where I was again founded part of a Marie Curie grant for my postdoctoral research at the Human Protein Atlas project to kind of push forward the methodology development, trying to apply the method that we developed during my thesis at a much larger scale, because the Human Protein Atlas project, for those of you who know a little bit about them, they are focused on trying to map the human proteome on biological samples, so biofluids and tissue. But because of the tissue connection, they needed methods applied to images. And this is where I fit it in terms of my research. And then by the end of this 3-year postdoctoral research, this is where I saw that, and I think it's part of the question that were asked during the registration on what made me switch from academia to industry. It was a very personal decision, because I didn't see myself as a researcher in academia. I was more driven by the fast. I already had some experience during my thesis. I didn't mention it, but I was for 1 year. I took a séjour during my thesis for 1 year, and I moved to California, San Diego, where I worked with a company, and this is where I saw the kind of biotech, because it was not a small biotech; it was a 300 people company. So I saw the environment on the industry, and by the end of my postdoc, I made the decision to move towards industry, not because the academia, and I want to really stress this, not because the academia is necessarily bad or good, but because it's again, it was a personal decision of where I saw myself, and the industry was the kind of environment where I felt I would be more fulfilled with regard to my personal, intellectual, scientific objectives. And today, so this is we're talking about now 9 years after that. I haven't regretted doing it. So I still feel very fulfilled on what I do. And after 2013, I moved to France, where I've held several positions in different small and mid-sized biotech. And I think this is because, again, it was part of the question that were submitted during your registrations. This is also an advice that I had during in these early years, to kind of build experience by trying to work on different projects, different methodologies, different imaging methodologies. And that's kind of what drove again my desire to to move across different biotechs before being today part of Sanofi, where I kind of have the skills, this large panel of skills that I can apply internally to a big pharma company such as Sanofi. So this was kind of a career path move that for me, at least, it helped me a lot to find my real position and my real a good fit internally to a big pharma company like Sanofi. But I also want to say that it is not necessarily the path that everybody needs to follow. So today we hire people from academia, coming straight away from a postdoc or from a doctoral thesis. It kind of very much fits on. It's also a question of timing, of you being in the right place at the right moment on the right company. So for me, it kind of moved this way, but it doesn't need to be the same for everybody. But definitely, if you build these skills, and the next slide is kind of an illustration of what kind of skills I tried to build during my biotech experience. So I worked a lot on what you see in this slide is the major steps of the R&D drug discovery for pharma. So you start from the target discovery, and then you do so it will be your target from a therapeutical area point of view. Then you do a screening of small, large molecules that can bind to the target, and then you move slowly towards more knowledge generation, optimization, preclinical development, where you try to test in small animals how efficient that this lead to target to hit this lead to lead linking is efficient. Toxicity, this is again what's something you do on the preclinical development, and then you move to the last stage, which is the clinical trial. So this 6 stages is where I tried to build my experience in several biotechs before I moved to Sanofi. But again, it's a question of timing, that if you have the right expertise in one of those areas, you can fit in with regard to a position today in the pharma. Definitely what helped me is also the hands-on experience, because this is something that is highly valuable when it comes to pharma, is you being productive and efficient on a specific technology and with regard to a specific concrete need. So what I mean is that theoretical experience or training on courses online or during your PhD might be a good start, but having hands-on experience is definitely something that is very, very well received and seen by hiring manager today in pharma. Then just moving on to what's the trend today on the pharma industry. I don't know how much you follow the trend, but the area of big pharma today is gone. The days where everything that was done in house is also gone. Apologies. So there's a lot of outsourcing being done today in the pharma. The more close to the early stages, the more outsourced the activities are. And that's something for you to take into account if you, depending on what you want to develop. And also to, with regard to the interactions that you will typically have if you join the pharma industry, that the more close to the early development you are, and the more interaction you will have with startups, the CROs, the contract research organizations, academic labs. There's a lot of interactions again with academic labs or center of excellence in the different countries that the pharma industries have their centers. So in briefly, the big pharma is really reinventing itself to be more agile. This is the really key word. Also with regard to the way that things work internally. So you really need to be agile in the way that you think, the way you work. And this is how the pharma today is trying to reinvent itself, to be more agile and more acting more, to be more agile also with regard to the business side, to the how things move in terms of the what other companies are doing. And this is why a lot of these activities are being today are outsourced to make these the big pharmaceutical companies more able to act quickly in terms of quick decisions. Just one slide to give you an idea of the pharma, the different steps of a drug development process, but is also kind of trying to again stress the need of in the pharma to be agile, because as you see the shape, the width of the arrow, it basically highlights the number of hypotheses that you're going to test from early discovery till you go to registration, and the more you go, the more closer you come to the clinical trial stages, the more quickly you need to react to a decision that need to be made based on an experiment, based on results on a clinical trial. And this is why typically today we, as part of the team that I lead and all the teams that I collaborate with, we try to be very agile in the way that we define the project, and this is also something that's again back to this transition from academia to industry that motivated my choice. And it's not something that it can be an environment that can fit for everybody. So if you are more used to being part of long-term efforts, 2-3 year efforts, this is something that it would be very unlikely to happen in the pharma. So things are move very much quickly today because of the risks that are associated. Again, if you look at this arrow, as you move more to the high risk stages of the clinical trials, and this is why you need to be, for example, part of the project that I'm working on, very frequently we try to reevaluate the importance of the project, and very frequently we move from one project to another. And this is, again, I'm trying to stress out the need for you to be agile in the way that you work, in the way that you develop the relationship with your colleagues, that you should accept this high risk and agile environment. What type of jobs are available today? Now, there are risks. It's a very challenging, very agile environment, but this comes also with a downside positive value, which is that there are a lot of opportunities. So you could work, and I've listed some of the areas where today you as a scientist, depending on the background you have, you can fit in. So of course you can fit on the drug discovery, on the development side, what we call the CMC, the chemistry and manufacturing. the drug metabolism studies, the toxicology studies, and again, please, during the Q&A session, don't hesitate to ask questions about these topics. I can very fairly say that I have a good understanding of everything there except the drug metabolism, where it's not my area of expertise. But if you have any questions on the other topics, please do not hesitate to ask questions about opportunities. But all these areas are areas where there is opportunity for you as a scientist. So what is the recruitment process perspective today? And with regard to that, I've tried to give you this recruitment perspective in terms of what are the challenges from a manager perspective, so my perspective, and then I have another slide trying to try to see these challenges as an opportunity, but from an applicant point of view. So there's a talent shortage in today. And the way that we work today is to maximize the chance of finding the right talent for a position by working first through network. So we ask our peers internally and externally for good candidates. And then there is the more formal process that goes through the internal and external human resources. There's a high turnover rate on the pharma today. And when I say this, I can fairly confidently say that for all of pharma, where I have my colleagues, my friends working on. So what that means, and then this is part of this is it's partly due to the risk that the environment to the risk environment that we work on. And also back to this evolution trend that I mentioned earlier on, that the pharma is trying to be more agile, trying to react very, very quickly in a much quicker time span. So we're talking about 6 months to evaluate a particular drug development. And then every time there is a reevaluation, then there is need of then there is a turnover. It comes with this kind of evolution, and this is something you need to accept. That you need to accept turnover, meaning that within your team you will have colleagues that might leave, might come, but also yourself. You need to really, but I really think over before coming to this environment that you might be in the position at one point of your career that you might need to reevaluate your role in a particular therapeutical area and try to move to another therapeutical area. The good news is that there is, if you want to move internally or externally to another company, then there is opportunities. So you can you're not left alone. Of course, if it's an internal movement, you will always be followed by the human resources to have a smooth career change from one therapeutical area to another therapeutical area. But it's something that you need to consider as part of this career move, that this is something that might happen. So with regard to the hiring manager perspective, this is why when we interview the candidates, we try to check how, in terms of the skills, the soft skills, the hard skills, how likely the candidates are to would be able to react to this kind of changes, and also what is their career plan, because depending on their career plan, they might or might not fit in terms of a position that might be already planned to be a risky position. So this is why we really need to, and I will come to the next slide on what's you as an applicant perspective. You really have to think very carefully when you apply to a position about your career plan. because it's not only about skills, but it's also about how do you match with regard to this internal perspective of the project. And then another important point is the regulatory requirements, that the environment that we evolve, it's a very strictly regulated environment. So what that means is that depending on the position that you are going to apply, you also need some qualifications, certifications, and certain experience to work with certain instruments. So this is because of this regulatory requirement. We also try to check in our applicants this kind of skills. And of course, it's a global competition. So what that means is that we also the way that we manage the recruitment is not the same depending on the country. So the recruitment process is very different. If I think of the recruitment I'm trying to do for my team in France, that would a colleague of mine will have to do in the US, and it has to do also with the cultural differences between Europe and US, but also between the different European countries. So again, this is something that you also need to take into account when you apply to a position with regard to how the different recruitment processes are dealt in different countries. So then, coming to the way that you would see the recruitment process. So what would you have so what should you do to maximize your chances? Well, first of all, you need to develop your network through the professional, of course, professional networks like LinkedIn, Twitter. A lot of things are done in LinkedIn today. So try to develop your profile in LinkedIn and trying to highlight what I mentioned in my previous slide. So the necessary skills, the right soft, hard skills, and also depending also on your profile. For example, if you are applying to a data science, what is also very important is the relevant also profiles such as the GitHub or Google Scholar when it comes to publications. So you should try to really work this, because this is very important, again, because of the process. And I have another slide to detail the recruitment process. Because the first stages will always be a screening stage where non-expert will try to evaluate your profile, and they will really look for keywords. So it's very important that your profile has the right keywords, and you're not missed because you don't have this right keywords. So in terms of the high turnover rate, you really need to clearly identify what are your key soft, hard skills. And again, this career plan is very important when you apply for a position, because again, you have to think also from your perspective. You don't want to be on the wrong place and having to move after a certain period. So you want to really maximize the really good match between what you want and what your team, the hiring team wants. And this is why it's very important that you really, on your side, try to think very carefully, what is your short, mid, and long-term career plan? And then again, because on these regulatory requirements, you need to really get acquainted with the pharma, and then highlight those in your CV. With regard to the global competition, also something that's very important during the hiring process, you should also get informed about the market value you have, because it's very important that there's a match between, again, the soft, hard skills, your career plan, but also in terms of your more personal objectives, in terms of finance, in terms of the package, the global package that you are trying to negotiate. But you really need to get informed before applying in terms of what you really want to, so that when it comes to, if everything moves smoothly through the interviewing process and it comes to the end, that the discussion at the point can be very smooth as well. So what is the typical process? Before I detail the steps, the really keywords are be prepared and also have questions ready for every single one of those 4 steps. But the main, and this is, I mean, it's not a schematic process that everybody will follow, even if I think of internally to Sanofi. But based off my experience in previous biotech at Sanofi, I would say that it would be very well 4 major steps that I've passed through every single interview. So the first one is the telephone screen. Again, you need to practice. You need to show enthusiasm for the role that you're applying. Very important to this this screening phase. The next step would be the face-to-face interview with the hiring manager and the team. And again, it's very important to show enthusiasm, to be positive. And what is particularly important at this stage is for you to know the team and know also the company. If by mistake the hiring team, the HR hasn't give you the information about the team, then you should not hesitate to ask the hiring manager the information about who are you going to interview, so that you can inform yourself about each member, each interest, and you get prepared and have questions ready. This will be very highly positively viewed by the hiring manager and the team, and will really increase the chance not only for you to get the position, but again, what is for me the most important thing is that you really match with the position, so that in the long term you're not going to move from your position either internally or externally. And this is very important, why you need to really ask questions and know who are you going to interview. Then the last part, in particular, if you're applying for a scientific the scientific position, then you will have to likely give a scientific presentation. And what's very important in this stage is to be to show some humility. Be very specific on the project that you are going to present. Do not show things that you are not you haven't done yourself, but really focus on what you have really participated, and be very specific of what was your contribution. Again, it's very important to ask questions, but also what is also very important is that to let other ask questions as well. And at the end, you need to establish what are the next steps, so that there's a very clear perspective of what is the and this is very important, because sometimes the perspective cannot be very clear, but then you need to know that before making a decision if you have another offer. But you should not, if you feel that that's the right match, then you need to know that that maybe you need to wait a little bit to get the final answer. And this is why it's very important that before you end up this last interview process, that you know exactly what is the perspective for regard to the next step, the human resources interview or the offer. And then it's the last stage, which would be hopefully the last one, where you have to negotiate an offer. And again, this is where it's very important that you are prepared again with regard to what you really want in terms of financial package and position. So what are the positive trends today in the industry? And I really wanted to give you this as a motivational slide. The candidates are gaining power today, so we have to, and this is again something that you really need to be more and more motivated to ask during the interview process. You should really ask the question to the hiring manager or to the team that you're going to get to introduce. Why should they? Why should you work for them? And this is a question that you really are today in the position to ask, and it's again a question that you should ask during the interviewing process. But what I want to say by this phrase that the candidates are also gaining power is also a fact that it's also a trend that because of the shortage of people, of talents, there is a desire today to give candidates also the necessary flexibility, personal flexibility, if you want to work from home or other requirements that you might have for a specific position. And then again comes to the next point that the trend is in the industry today is to really create a high performance culture where there's a promotion of more flexibility with regard to the way of working. What I mentioned previously, this hybrid way of working, that there's not anymore necessary for everybody to be in the office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And there is also a trust that is built between the hiring manager and the employees for a more open, transparent communication. And the really what kind of wrap up all the first 3 points is that the industry is moving toward a more tailored work experience. So the way that I negotiate the way I work doesn't necessarily have to be the same as you. And what really prevails at the end of the day is the employee well-being and the team bonding. So everything will be put in place for these two things to happen: the employee well-being and the team bonds. And another important point is that if you think of, in particular for those of you who are would be a first time in the pharma, especially in the big pharma, when you look at from outside, it might be like you might look at it as a very, very complex environment, and you might be a bit afraid of how well you fit. But what you should know is that as part of your first 6 months of work, we will spend a lot of time pre-boarding. So you'll be trained for a lot of different tasks. So you should not get you should not be afraid of the way that things looks from outside, as long as the hiring manager and the team thinks that you might fit for a particular position. The CV, again, I want to mention this because it's very important, in particular for the first phase of the screening, that you really need to work out the CV. That need to be very clear and concise, focus on the work experience. Again, this might be for some of you might be something that you already know, but I just wanted to highlight again experiences in reverse chronological order. That what is also important, that these experiences should add in terms of value, should not be repetitive. In particular, if you have a lot of them, you should really highlight those that kind of complement each other. And really, you should, on your experience, you should really highlight what kind of responsibilities you had and the skills that you have developed across every one of these experiences. You really need to state a personal statement of why you want to apply for this position. You really need to make it personal, this application. And this, again, will be very carefully looked by the human resources, but also by afterwards in the later stages by the hiring manager and the team. You should really highlight the skills. And what I want to mention here is that you should really think of globally the skills, right? Should really have a good balance between the soft and the hard skills on the CV. What is very important is also this interpersonal communication. And highlighting of on your previous experience, on how were you able to work in a multidisciplinary environment, and particularly focus on how were you how close you were to a mindset, to a problem-solving mindset. So, and not just focus on technical skills on during the CV compilation. And in terms of your qualification, you need. I mean, in particular, for those of you who have done a lot of courses and a lot of trainings, you really need to again tailor, personalize your CV and trying to make it as much relevant to the application that you are applying to. And then the last slide that I have before moving to the QA session, I want to give you more perspective from the data science point of view. The way that we work on the pharma today is that the science is more direct, it's more purposed. And again, back to this transition from academia to industry, this is also what made me choose to switch career from academia to industry. It's really to be in an environment where science is more directed, more goal-oriented, more business-oriented. Scientists are held accountable for what they do. Failure is not a big deal. It's the norm. We fail a lot. If you think of that narrow arrow that was kind of going from very large to much narrow, it doesn't work without failure. So there is a very large rate of failure. What is very important is for you to able to cope with this failure, trying to learn from it. So we talk a lot about taking internally taking calculated risk. So again, failure is not a problem as long as it's a failure comes after a calculated risk and you learn from that failure. Again, this is also very important. Change is the norm, so one must be very comfortable with change. So I have changed in 3 years at Sanofi. I've changed 2 times the type of data that I'm working with. And this is something that you should be comfortable with. Competition is also something that you should expect. Although it's not academia, we still interact with academia. We still apply as a scientist. I have to apply for grants as well, externally, but also internally. So really, again, you should not be. You should not think that you move from academia to industry and then suddenly things are more smooth and you don't have to think about this competition for research money. It is part of the daily work. It is less important than academia, definitely, but it's something that you have to think of. Then what is very nice about the data science, and this is something that I'm very glad that I choose this career, is that internally you have a lot of opportunities. And this makes this change also much easier for you, especially if you come from this data science career. Because, and I've just listed there, for example, what we call business unit internally, where with my skills, I can very easily go from one to the other. For example, we have the pharma, the vaccine, the CMC, the clinical development, the marketing, digital. And in all these environments, as long as you have these data science skills, you can move from one to the other. Again, it's a very task data-driven problem mindset, and you really should be comfortable and willing to adopt this way of thinking. A lot of the decisions are driven by business, and again, it's a very interdisciplinary team in an environment, and very important, it's a global environment. So you have to interact with, in particular, in the big pharma like Sanofi, you have to interact with teams across different time zones, different centers, and again, you need to be flexible with this sort of environment. And again, then I just wanted to also highlight, again, maybe it's not for every pharma, but it's a kind of entry point for you as a data scientist if you're coming from academia, and it can be the entry points for you depending on where you are. So of course, I mean, some of you already have your doctorate degree, but you can also, try to start as a trainee if you really want to develop the data science as a skills. In the previous company I had a scientist that started as a trainee because it changed career from wet lab to data science. So it's still a possibility. Then you can also see your career as a linear evolution. So you can come from a PhD and then move to a postdoc, or you can even apply for a PhD today. So it is a possibility. It is not available for every country, but at least it's in France. It is a possibility. You can do a PhD, an industry academia PhD, but you can also do a postdoc in industry. But again, you will have to be comfortable working on very high risk, cutting edge projects. Then you can start also as a junior scientist. What we call a junior scientist typically is somebody with either fresh from a PhD or up to 2 years experience. And then again, you will be working on several data science projects. I mean, these last 3 career paths are more for what we would call a regular employee, not necessarily a PhD or a postdoc. Then the second path would be that of a senior scientist, which would be a scientist with between 2 and 5 years work experience. The difference from the previous position is that this kind of profile will have more leading responsibilities on a project. But again, it will require from this person to be very agile on project management, because again of this trend on the pharma industry that I mentioned in my first slides. And then the last entry point as a scientist maybe would be the principal scientist position, where we're talking about a scientist with at least 5 years work experience after your PhD, where you would typically lead much larger initiatives. So maybe a project that involves several teams, and we also have much more responsibilities in terms of experimental designs, communications, and reporting to the upper management. What kind of opportunities you have, and then I want to highlight this in terms of personal, more from a personal point of view. If you are after, and this is again, if you think of the first paragraph, this is kind of what was missing for me when I was in academia. So this knowledge of, or being part of an organization where we were creating new drugs, where we are improving actual clinical trials, where we were more close to the development of really current solution drugs for patients. And if it is something that you really wish to develop, then the industry in the pharma would be the right place for you to be. Improving patient lives. Again, this is also part of the motivation why I moved from academia to industry. Of course, you will always have this, even if you are in academia. But again, you will probably be more close to this solution to improve patient lives if you are in industry. Image analysis, it's a big opportunity today. This is what my team does, and this is what I'm leading. We are using image analysis today for identifying new diseases or targets for existing therapeutical areas like cancer. But the goal, and this is where the AI and deep learning is playing a role, and is going to play a much larger role, is to be able to identify these targets much earlier, and targets that would be more subtle, targets that typically an expert like a pathologist or a medical doctor would not be able to do if he or she would have to look at those images. So this is where the image analysis is expected to play a role. Another aspect that might drive your career move, is to expedite drug discovery. So the data science is expected to play a big role here to reduce this arrow that I presented on my first slide, from about 12 years, which is the average time today, to about to a few years. And of course, the last point is to have a better follow-up with patients, And this is where we talk about digital biomarkers. Then the data science is it's expected to play a big role here to help companies, pharma companies, to better understand their customers and better analyze the patient interactions with the doctor and help improve existing drugs or analyze these interactions to design new, better novel compounds. And that was the last slide I want to present. I think we have run slightly over time.
Yeah, but thank you, Elton, for all this very nice presentation. And I've also gave permission to all the participants to their microphone and camera. So
yeah,
if you have any question, please just open your microphone and ask the question. As I mentioned, I had already sent your questions to Elton, and so he incorporated that into the presentation. However, if you think that some of the questions were not answered, or if you have very specific question that you want to ask him, please do so. I have one question here. Is the postdoc experience necessary to apply for a PhD or for a position in industry? Or
no, I would say no. It's not a requirement. It depends on your postdoc experience, to be honest with you. If it's if your postdoc it's a postdoctoral research on something that can, I mean, on a project that has given you the opportunity to test a new technology, so develop your skills. It will not hurt your chances of getting accepted, and it will definitely not be will be not penalizing you for any position that you will be applying. But you should really think of your postdoc in terms of also in terms of this long-term career development, right? Because it might not be immediately, and this has actually happened for me, that a lot of my previous experience, also the postdoc, it was not immediately valuable for the position I applied, but down the road, things can be valuable. So this is, you really should think in terms of long-term career development, and as long as this postdoc makes you complete your skills, your knowledge, it's definitely not penalizing.
Okay, Katie, yes, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ronella, for this. Thank you very much, Elton, for your presentation. It was quite deep, insightful. I was wondering, on the same note that you were speaking of the postdoc. So if you want, as a postdoc, make the jump in industry, what is or how far you should aim, how far up you should aim for your jump? What I mean is, are you going to apply for a principal scientist, or are you going to be a senior scientist? And is this based on what you have achieved over your postdoc?
I would say it depends, honestly. It depends. Depends also on how many postdocs you have done, right? Because if it's your first postdoc, then you are typically you are under 5 years of experience, and the principal scientist might be not the right fit for you. So I would say maybe the senior scientist would be more fit. But I can, for example, say for the last position that I was trying to fill, I had a postdoctoral scientist that so she had 2 consecutive postdocs on 2 fields that were very much related to the position that I was trying to fulfill, And because how well she fits with the position, we were actually thinking to make an offer for a slightly towards more of a principal scientist position. So it really depends on how many postdocs you have and how well the experience on that or those postdocs fits with the actual job description.
Yeah, so it is like a kind of job description of how much, for example, you have performed as a postdoc, which means teaming lead a project, being always awarded with grants and published. So you have delivered everything. And of course, you can't be just seen only as a senior scientist, because that is what's scary people like myself and other, when you see that you have performed quite nicely, but it's scary the jump on the other side.
Because you might end up on a senior scientist position and not
when you already have been fully independent, you have to go quite low because you have still to demonstrate, oh, sorry, I haven't yet improved to write SOPs.
Yeah.
But I can write grants and I can write scientific papers.
Yeah. No, I think it's a question of matching of on the job requirements. And again, what I call here principal scientist, I know other companies that the same, if you think of what's in the brackets, if you match what's inside the brackets, they will maybe qualified as an associate director.
Yeah, I know. AstraZeneca right. has promoted everybody on that side.
Well, you mentioned the word. I didn't want to.
Well, I know well. I live in the area. That's it. But thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, Amber, you can ask your question, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, Elton. Thanks a lot for this insightful meeting. And
I'm sorry, can you increase your volume, please, or be close to the microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot for such an insightful meeting. It was very useful for me. I just wanted to know that how strictly are the companies looking for domain expertise? Like I asked this question in the context that I started with biotechnology as an undergraduate, but over the period of the time, I migrated more to electronics than doing computer science stuffs. So if I make an application, how strictly, like even the pharma industry, they will be, sticking to the domain expertise of biotechnology or pharma in my CV.
So if I understood your question is that how strictly your experience on telecom, right, or IT?
Yeah, on like IT, semiconductors,
Okay.
more Internet of Things will be. They are in data science. I'm using machine learning models, but how it will be evaluated in the process of interviews and all.
This is actually a very interesting, a good question. We also try to be inclusive in our hiring process. So we also try to look for outsider skills, like the one that you mentioned, because they can be very valuable internally to challenge some status quo in terms of data science. Let's say the way that we look at imaging, the way that I look at imaging, that I've done it for 10 years. So this is why we typically hire scientists that have never looked at a medical image before. They have previously worked with semiconductors or or physics, because we really want to promote this inclusive environment to challenge the status quo. And the reason why this is important is because this is typically what drives innovation forward. And I would say it's a very valuable set of skills. But then what you really need to understand also that you need to match somehow on, again, in this job description, because you need to fulfill certain needs. But it can be, and as long as you fulfill certain needs under supervision of a much senior person, but you kind of match, for example, the technical parts for doing, let's say, image analysis, data science, under the supervision of a more experienced scientist that knows the biology, the more the application side. Together, I mean, as a team, this can be this would be typically the environment that would be promoted to drive innovation forward, because it will allow insight from other fields that can, again, challenge the status quo and bring interesting ideas in the table.
Okay, so thank you so much. I mean, it's very helpful.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. So another question is about the CV. How can we make the CV stand out? Is it advisable to use unconventional formatting? I can talk a little bit about this, because most of the companies nowadays, they might use also, especially in US, but also here in Europe, they might use artificial intelligence. And that means that you might want to keep it as simple as possible, so it's readable for the AI, or I don't know, any application that the HR is using. So probably not very beautiful, but just useful.
I have nothing to add to that. I think it's you nailed down it on it. You really, it needs to be. I mean, it's really what on it that I said. It's AI is playing a major role, especially NLP based methods. So it really needs to be as simple as possible to allow these tools to work efficiently.
Can you share with us if Sanofi is using any AI-assisted HR tool or not yet?
I don't know actually,
Okay.
because I mean we typically leave it to the HR, but as I said, we also collaborate with external HR partners, and for sure, I mean today, given the role that AI and NLP based solution have, I would say for sure they will be using these tools.
Is it advisable to connect directly the person who posted the job in LinkedIn or I don't know, any other social media, and then just apply directly to them? Or I remember you had posted a job position, right? Does it mean that the HR will go through the screening process of all the candidates, or you will be involved in that as well?
They will do a first screening, and I will get involved on the second phase of stage of screening. But if you would have contact me, I will definitely not have ignored your contact, and you should, if you know the person, if you feel you can make a connection to that person to highlight your skills, you should definitely do it. But I can also, it also depends on the maybe on the biotech, the pharma, the company, that for legal reasons it has to go through to the human resources channels. And anyway, what I would have advised is to go through the official application, because I cannot accept an application myself. But at least what I can do, and this is why I'm saying that it doesn't hurt, is that I can contact the HR if I feel that there's a very strong candidate to look more carefully at some profiles. So this is what I can do. If I feel that a certain profile is a very strong it's a very strong profile. But then something I need to say is that the HR they also do a certain screening that with regard to the way that the CVs are structured, the way that they also, or particularly to the phone interviews. So they will also have their words to say on this first screening. So although I might feel that somebody is very strong looking at the CV, the HR might actually not consider that. They say that, okay, no, this person did not perform well during the screening interview. But then you come into me or to the recruiting manager. It really doesn't hurt. If you know the person, you should really contact him and try to highlight why you are applying for that position.
There is somebody who has asked a very specific question. Which skills would you recommend PhD students, postdoc, working usually in vitro with cells to develop to be able to join a team working in bioinformatics? Would this also be possible, and would you encourage it, the current AI developments?
Yeah, I would say the current AI development would be the skills that will this kind of person working in vitro assays would need to develop. And this is very important today. Part of this internal trends is that there is and this pre-boarding that I mentioned is that there is because of the role that the data science has internally, there is a desire to develop every single employee in terms of the data science capabilities. So if you are outside and you have this this experience on the in vitro assays, if you develop some skills during online courses or more formal trainings, it will definitely improve your visibility and the value of your profile when it comes to the hiring process, because it will basically require less work internally to develop your data science skills. And it's something that internally today, I can confidently say in other pharma as well, it is part of the sort of the baseline skills that everybody needs to have. Being able to do, to speak intelligently about data science and be operational on the data science level. Even as a data scientist or as a data analyst, we can discuss this. But at least you should be able to interact all this in this environment.
So basically, for non-computer scientists, they should learn some programming. And for computer scientists or other like engineering profile, they should learn a little bit more about the biology. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. What is the first thing that you usually see when you have a CV in your hands?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you look for a particular skill or particular section of the CV that, I mean, if this candidate doesn't have it, then I'm not gonna look at the rest of the CV?
I would say the work experience would be the first section. And
which section do you think that is missing on most the CVs that you've received?
The soft skills. I think a lot of people, I think, have the misconception that hard skills, technical skills are more relevant, and they underevaluate how valuable these soft skills, communication skills are in an environment as it is pharma today.
Okay, I see. Well, if anybody else has a question, please open your mic and jump in. I think I don't have any more questions, because the question that most of the participants asked, you had incorporated very well in your presentation. So I think we have covered everything, but okay, yes, Ivo.
Hello?
Yes,
Do
we
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. Yes.
Great. Well, first, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and very good insights about pharma. I would like to ask a question, not about hiring people necessarily, but how would you hire startups to work with you on a project? How would you evaluate a good startup to help you out with the problems that you're having? Because this is also a hiring process, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you consider the technology that they're going to bring, because you can't develop everything inside, so you would outsource a lot of things. And how would you, if somebody came to you and said, look, I have this brilliant idea and I have this small startup, how would
Yeah.
this work?
I'm actually in charge of one of these programs where I evaluate startups, so it's a good question. The process it's a bit more complex than evaluating people, right? Because it's you really need to. I mean, it goes through several stages where you initially there is an initial call for projects. I mean, this is one way that we interact with the startup ecosystem here in Europe. There's a call for in a particular topic, and then we expect startups to apply to this call, but in a very broad subject, right? And then depending on the calls, we try to look at the what technology these startups have, and what is very important at this stage is their the IP, how much IP they have, publications, how many publications they have. And then the second stage would be for one of us internally to talk to these startups, understand a little bit better the technology, and try to evaluate how can they match our internal needs. And in other words, trying to tailor a little bit what they are proposing to us to something that can be more specific to our needs. And I can say that during the second stage, what is also very important is the how connected these startups are to the research environment, to let's say clinical centers, hospitals, places that will fuel the data. Because this is what I do, data science. So we need data to do the data science. So these startups need to, they cannot afford to generate data, so they need to collaborate with clinical centers and hospitals. So something that will be very carefully looked upon is how well connected you are to these centers. And then at the end, there is, although you might have a very well, you might wish to work with us, then depending on the technology you have, you might be limited to what you can do. So then you will, I mean, you will do a final proposal, and what typically happens is that you're not the only one applying. So there might be several propositions that can be equally. I mean, they can compete for the same type of project. And then internally there will be a reviewing process that will try to evaluate the pro and the counter values of every proposal, and then based on this reviewing process, a winner will be selected. Yeah, it's in a nutshell, it is the way that we interact. But it can be, so this is one way. Another way is that you can is through contacts, internal contacts. So you might have you being a startup, you may have an internal contact that has a project, has a funding internally for that project, and then in this way you can have a more direct partnership with somebody, with a department or a team internally, and this can work as well. But then you really need to know the internal environment. You need to know who you contact, what they do. But this is a second alternative, that you go directly to the person that has the project, has the money, has the data.
Nice. Thank you. That was very interesting. I might have some additional questions, but I will ask you on LinkedIn if that's okay.
Yeah, please don't hesitate. It's part of my job, so I'm very happy to.
Oh,
to
great.
discuss.
Well, it was lovely to meet you, and thank you for organizing this.
Well, thank you to Ornella.
Yeah, thank you, Ornella. Like this is great. honestly.
I guess we need to wrap up everything now because it went a little bit beyond what we had planned. But thank you everyone for staying up until now, until the end, and thank you, Elton, for your presentation, for sharing all the information, and everything that you edited. I'm guessing the last minute because I sent the questions today. And everybody, if you have any more questions, please contact Elton. He's in LinkedIn and Elton.
and Twitter.
If I have also tagged Elton in his Twitter, so I've shared the promotions of this webinar also in there at the MCAA Western Balkans Chapter profile. So please go follow him there as well. And thank you very much, and have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.